Have you ever had that strange moment where your body knew before your mind caught up? Maybe you reached for your phone just seconds before a message arrived, or you walked into a room and felt something was off, even though nothing obvious had happened yet. That little shiver of knowing, the tug in your chest, the quiet nudge that doesn't come from logic, that's the signal I want to talk about with you. We're trained to dismiss it. School tells us to rely on facts. Work tells us to rely on strategy. Even self-help books often say, make a plan and stick to it. But what happens when the plan doesn't match the deeper current of your reality? What happens when your intuition is whispering a completely different direction? Here's the twist most people miss. Your intuition isn't some mystical accident. It's not random. It's your nervous system and your consciousness picking up on subtle quantum signals before your rational brain can process them. The science is still catching up, but think of it this way. Every possibility is like a radio station already broadcasting. Your body is the antenna. And sometimes it catches a future frequency before your conscious mind tunes in. The problem is that we often mistake these signals for noise. We override them, doubt them, or wait for proof. And in that hesitation, we cut ourselves off from the clearest guidance we could ever receive. So in this conversation, I want to show you how to recognize those signals in real time. How to tell the difference between fear and intuition, between old programming and a genuine quantum nudge. And more importantly, how to trust it. Because once you can catch the frequency, your life starts shifting in ways that logic alone could never arrange. If we strip it all down, intuition is really the meeting point between observation and embodiment. Most people think it's only about gut feelings, but the mechanism is more precise than that. Think of yourself as a living radio. Reality is broadcasting infinite frequencies at once. Different choices, outcomes, timelines, and emotional fields are already humming. Your body is the antenna, and your attention is the tuner. Now, here's where the observer effect comes in. Physics shows us that the very act of observing influences what unfolds. It's not passive. When you direct attention toward a possibility, it's as if you lock the tuner closer to that station, making it stronger. But attention alone isn't enough. If your body is jammed with static, fear, stress, survival mode, then even if you point toward a frequency, the signal comes in fuzzy. You'll doubt it, misread it, or lose it in the noise. This is why embodiment matters so much. It's not just about noticing thoughts, but about what your entire system is radiating. Your posture, breath, and emotions are all parts of the antenna. When they're aligned, the signal becomes unmistakable. That sudden knowing isn't magic, it's coherence. Let me give you a simple picture. Imagine scrolling through an old-school radio dial. You turn the knob slowly, and static fills the room. But then, just for a moment, a melody cuts through the fuzz. That's your intuition. The faint glimpse of a frequency already present. Most people hear that flicker and then keep scrolling thinking that can't be real. But if you pause, hold steady, and let your body relax into it, the melody strengthens. Soon the song is clear. This is the snapshot I want you to hold. Your intuition is not predicting out of thin air. It's catching the signal of a reality already in play. And your nervous system is the filter that decides whether the song comes through crisp or garbled. So the next time you feel that tug, that impulse to turn left instead of right, to pause before sending the text, to reach out to someone, don't dismiss it as irrational. Ask yourself, am I hearing static or am I catching the edge of a station? And what would happen if I trusted it long enough to let the song get louder? Because here's the twist. Most people never realize what blocks the melody in the first place, and that's where we need to go next. One of the biggest myths around intuition is that it's supposed to arrive as a loud, dramatic voice from the heavens, like a lightning strike of certainty. People think if it's real, it'll feel obvious, absolute, undeniable. And because it rarely shows up that way, they dismiss the quieter signals that are actually the real thing. The truth is, intuition doesn't usually shout. It whispers. It flickers. It feels more like a gentle shift in your body than a booming message. If you wait for the Hollywood version of intuition, you'll miss the actual signal that was already guiding you. Let me ground this with something relatable. Imagine this. You're waiting for a job interview. You've done all the prep, memorized your answers, polished your resume, but as you sit in the waiting room, your chest tightens every time you rehearse the perfect line in your head. Then suddenly, When you let the script go, you feel a small drop of calm in your belly. For just a second, a thought surfaces. If I just show up as myself, it'll flow. That's intuition. Not a dramatic voice, just a shift in frequency your body caught. But here's the catch. Most people override that moment. They panic, grab the mental script again, and force themselves back into performance mode. They trust anxiety more than alignment. And the result? They leave the interview disconnected from their own power. So the myth to break is this. Intuition isn't about certainty first. It's about coherence first. It's not the loudest thought in the room. It's the signal that feels subtly different from the noise. It's steady rather than frantic, expansive rather than contracting. The more you practice noticing it, the clearer it becomes. Like training your ear to recognize a song after hearing only 2 notes. At first, you'll doubt it. Later, you'll recognize it instantly. And this matters because if you don't know how to separate intuition from fear, you'll keep running in circles. You'll think you're following guidance, but really you're just amplifying static. And that leaves people exhausted, confused, and convinced they can't trust themselves. But here's the thing most don't realize. Your body is already wired to tell the difference. The signal of intuition and the surge of fear live in completely different systems. And once you know how to read that map, everything changes. So how do we actually tell the difference between fear and intuition? The secret lies in your nervous system. Fear is survival energy. It speeds up your heart, tightens your muscles, narrows your focus. It's a full-body contraction designed to keep you safe. Intuition, on the other hand, has an entirely different texture. Even if the message it carries asks you to act quickly, it lands with an underlying steadiness. It doesn't clench you. It settles you. The tricky part is that most of us spend so much time in chronic stress that we mistake tension for truth. If your body is already buzzing with static, every signal feels the same. That's why nervous system regulation is the gateway. Without safety, you can't hear the station. Think of the radio metaphor again. If the antenna is shaking violently in the wind, even the strongest signal won't come through clearly. The moment you ground it, the melody stabilizes. Your nervous system works the same way. Let's try something right now. This will only take about 30 seconds, but it will show you how to reset the antenna. Close your eyes if you can. Take one slow breath in through your nose, deeper than usual. Hold it for a brief pause. Now exhale slowly through your mouth, as if you're fogging a window. Do it again, but this time, place one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Notice which one rises more. Gently guide your breath so your belly moves first. Now imagine as you breathe that the space around your heart is expanding slightly, softening. Stay with that sensation for 2 or 3 breaths. That's coherence beginning to form. You may feel a subtle drop, a tiny shift, like your system just unclenched by a few degrees. That state is where intuition becomes distinguishable. The static quiets. The signal grows louder. Most people chase intuition with a noisy antenna, wondering why they can't hear it. The answer isn't to strain harder, but to regulate first. When your body feels safe, your system naturally opens to subtle cues that were there all along. The knowing isn't something you force. It's what arises once the interference clears. And here's the powerful part. With practice, you don't need to sit in meditation for an hour to access this. A few breaths, a small shift in posture, even unclenching your jaw. These are micro keys that tune the antenna back to coherence in daily life. But regulation alone isn't the whole story. Because even when you catch a clear signal, you still face the deeper question. Are you embodying a temporary state, or are you shifting the identity that keeps tuning you into the same station? Now that you've felt what coherence does to the antenna, let's take it further. Because there's a trap here. Many people think manifestation and intuition are about chasing a certain state. They think, if I can just feel calm, positive, or high vibe long enough, the universe will reward me. But that's not how it works. A state is temporary. It's like visiting a radio station for a moment, catching the song, and then drifting back into static. You can meditate for an hour and feel perfectly aligned, but if your core identity, the way you see yourself, is still tuned to scarcity, fear, or self-doubt, you'll snap right back into the old station the moment life presses on you. Intuition isn't asking you to manufacture a mood. It's asking you to embody a signal, to become the kind of person whose baseline frequency naturally aligns with the outcomes you desire. That's why the job interview example mattered. If you're trying to fake confidence in the waiting room, that's a state. But if you've been living as someone who truly knows their worth, then when you walk in, your coherence isn't fragile. It's not a trick. It's your identity broadcasting clearly. This is where most people stumble. They collect spiritual practices like decorations, but never allow them to rewrite who they actually are. They chase moments of peace, but underneath, they still identify as the anxious one, the unworthy one, the struggler. And your body, the antenna, can't lie. It broadcasts what you are, not what you temporarily pretend to be. The good news is, identity can shift. Slowly, sometimes subtly, but powerfully. Every time you notice a signal and embody it instead of ignoring it, you reinforce a new version of yourself. Over time, the radio doesn't drift anymore. It stays locked onto the station that matches who you've become. So here's the question to sit with. Are you trying to borrow a signal, or are you becoming the station itself? The first is fleeting. The second rewires the field around you. And when you start living from identity rather than chasing states, something wild happens. Timelines reorganize. Realities you thought were impossible start showing up, not because you forced them, but because you were already broadcasting their frequency. And that brings us to the next level. How identity doesn't just change how you feel. It changes which version of reality you actually step into. Think of timelines as radio stations already playing. Every possibility, every version of your life is already on the dial. There's a station where you stay stuck, repeating the same cycles. There's a station where opportunities keep opening, synchronicities line up, and things flow. You don't create these from nothing. You tune into them through identity. Here's the piece most people overlook. Your identity acts as the preset on the radio. If deep down you identify as the person who's always struggling with money, you'll keep tuning to the timeline where bills pile up, where unexpected expenses hit at the worst times, where relief never lasts. Even when you try to manifest abundance, you're listening through the static of that identity. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine a young artist working on her music. She loves creating, but every time she sits down to record, her mind floods with comparisons. She scrolls, sees others succeeding, and feels like she's behind. Her identity has quietly become the overlooked one. And guess what? That identity pulls her into a station where opportunities seem to pass her by, where she misses chances because she's too caught in self-doubt to notice them. But something shifts the day she decides to embody a different truth. She begins to walk into the studio not as the overlooked one, but as the channel. She doesn't force confidence. She just tunes to the version of herself who already exists on the dial, the one who creates because she is creation. Suddenly, she notices invitations she had ignored, collaborators appear, and her work gets shared. The station she's tuned to was always there. Her identity shift simply locked her onto it. This is the real secret of intuition and manifestation. The signals you feel aren't random. They're glimpses of the stations your identity already has access to. When you shift who you are, you shift which timeline your nervous system and your choices align with. And here's the empowering part. You don't need to know every detail of the timeline in advance. You only need to hold the identity that matches it. Just like you don't know every song a station will play, but once you lock into it, the music keeps flowing. So the question becomes, how do we rehearse this shift? How do we move from old presets of scarcity or doubt into stations that match expansion, trust, and coherence? Now let's get practical. If identity is the preset, how do you actually change it? How do you stop drifting back to the old station and start rehearsing the one you actually want? The answer is practice, but not the kind most people imagine. It's not about forcing affirmations or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about building small, repeatable anchors that let your nervous system feel the new identity until it becomes natural. Think of it like training your ear to a new song. At first, you practice catching a single note. Over time, you know the melody by heart. Here are 4 tools you can use right away. 1. Bridge statements. Instead of saying, "I am completely abundant," when your body screams back, "No, you're not," use a bridge. Something like, "I'm open to the idea that opportunities are finding me now." It softens resistance and lets your system catch the new signal without static. 2. Somatic anchors. Choose a physical gesture or posture that embodies the identity you're tuning into. For example, if your new identity is the one who trusts, notice how your chest opens slightly, how your shoulders drop when you feel that trust. Repeat that posture consciously throughout the day. The body leads the signal. 3. Embodiment drills. Spend 2 minutes a day walking as if the new identity is already yours. Not pretending, not fake it till you make it, but letting your breath, gaze, and pace match the version of you who's already tuned to that station. Your body doesn't know the difference between rehearsal and reality. It just broadcasts the frequency it's in. 4. Micro rehearsals. Catch yourself in small daily decisions. When you feel the impulse to check your phone in anxiety, pause. Ask, what choice would the version of me I'm becoming make right now? Then act on that. Each micro choice reinforces the station. Put together, these form a mini protocol. Bridge the belief, anchor it in the body, rehearse it in motion, confirm it in micro decisions. Repeat enough times, and the identity begins to stabilize. It stops being a temporary state and starts being your baseline. And here's where I'd love to hear from you. Have you noticed that moment where you stopped gripping so tightly and suddenly the thing you wanted flowed in? Tell me your story in the comments. It might be exactly what helps someone else recognize their signal. But before we expand further, we need to address the traps. Because even with these tools, there are 3 sneaky obstacles that keep people looping back into static if they don't know how to transmute them. Even with the tools in hand, there are 3 traps that pull people off frequency faster than anything else: urgency, split signals, and over-control. If you can spot these in real time, you'll save yourself months, even years, of static. Let's start with urgency. When you're desperate for an outcome, your antenna starts vibrating wildly. You check your phone every few minutes, rehearse conversations in your head, or stare at the clock like it owes you something. That frantic energy doesn't open doors. It scrambles the signal. Why? Because urgency is rooted in lack. It says, I don't have it yet. And that's the station your body keeps broadcasting. The antidote isn't pretending you don't care. It's slowing your breath, softening into the present, and remembering that urgency is static, not signal. Next, split signals. This happens when you say you want something, but half of you is broadcasting the opposite. You want love, but you fear vulnerability. You want money, but you believe wealthy people are greedy. You want freedom, but you secretly feel safer in control. These contradictions cancel each other out, like 2 radio stations clashing. The result? Noise. The way through is integration. Name both sides honestly, then choose the identity that feels coherent. Once you align fully, the broadcast sharpens. Finally, over-control. This one is sneaky because it feels responsible. You plan, micromanage, and try to force every step to match the outcome you want. But here's the irony. The more you grip, the less you can hear. Control is like turning the volume knob so hard it breaks. Intuition thrives in openness, not in strangling the process. Real alignment doesn't come from force. It comes from frequency. So how do you transmute these traps? For urgency, drop into your body, breathe slower than your mind wants, and remind yourself, a true signal never rushes me. For split signals, write down both sides of the desire, then literally choose which identity you're broadcasting today. Speak it out loud, anchor it. For over-control, practice surrender in small, safe ways. Let someone else choose the restaurant. Take the scenic route instead of the fastest one. Teach your nervous system that letting go doesn't mean collapse, it means clarity. Once you start noticing these patterns, you'll see how often they've been running the show. The good news is, every time you catch and transmute one, your antenna stabilizes. You stop broadcasting noise and start embodying signal. And this is where intuition becomes not just a practice, but a lifestyle. Because the real breakthrough isn't what happens in meditation or rituals, it's how you live this coherence in the ordinary moments of your day. The real question is, how do you live this every day? Because intuition isn't meant to be a rare, mystical event. It's designed to guide you through the smallest choices, moment by moment. The integration happens not in the big breakthroughs, but in how you show up while walking, eating, working, and talking to others. Let's take something as ordinary as walking. Most people walk on autopilot, head down, lost in thought. But if you bring your attention to your breath and let your shoulders soften, the walk becomes an antenna reset. Suddenly you notice signals, the impulse to take a different street, the sense that you're being nudged to slow down. Sometimes the smallest detour brings you into the exact encounter or inspiration you needed. Or think about eating. If you shovel food while scrolling, you miss the subtle cues your body gives, not just about hunger, but about what actually nourishes you. When you eat slowly, tasting fully, you're practicing the same listening skill intuition requires. The station gets clearer when you stop drowning it out with noise. Even in conversations, the principle applies. Instead of rehearsing what you'll say next, try leaning into silence for a beat longer than usual. Feel into the frequency of the exchange. You'll notice things you would have missed, the subtle shift in someone's tone, the opening to say the thing that matters. That pause is intuition speaking through you. The integration is about turning everyday life into practice. Each ordinary act becomes an opportunity to align the antenna. Coherence isn't just for sacred rituals, it's for the way you tie your shoes, the way you check your messages, the way you close your laptop at night. And this is what changes everything. Once coherence is woven into the small moments, intuition stops feeling like a separate tool and becomes your natural state. You don't wait for it. You don't chase it. You live it. But here's where it gets exciting. Because once you can live this in the ordinary, you unlock something far bigger. The same signal that guides you through daily life begins to ripple into your relationships, your health, your creativity, even your sense of purpose. Entire domains of your reality start tuning to the station you've stabilized, and that's where we're headed next. Once the signal becomes natural in daily life, it doesn't stay small. The coherence you cultivate in walking, breathing, and pausing ripples into entire domains of your reality. Relationships, creativity, health, and even purpose begin to reorganize around the new frequency. Take relationships. When your antenna is scrambled, you project fear, insecurity, or old stories into every interaction. You text in panic, you read silence as rejection, you mold yourself to be liked. But when you stabilize the signal, your presence shifts. You no longer enter a room searching for proof that you belong. You radiate belonging. Others feel it before you say a word. Connections deepen, and the kind of people aligned with your true station start appearing. Creativity expands the same way. When you're tuned to static, you sit down to write, paint, or build and feel blocked. Ideas scatter, nothing flows. But once you're coherent, inspiration moves through you like a current. You don't squeeze creativity out of your brain, you catch it from the field. The artist scenario we explored earlier, that expansion only happened because she tuned to the identity of the channel. Once she did, the timeline of collaboration and recognition unfolded naturally. Health, too, responds to signal. Chronic tension and stress are forms of static. They keep the body bracing for threats that aren't present. When you practice coherence, the nervous system signals safety, and the body begins to repair. Energy returns. Even symptoms can shift because the baseline broadcast has changed from survival to harmony. And then there's purpose. This is where things get profound. Most people try to figure purpose out with their mind. What's my mission? What's my calling? But purpose isn't found like a treasure hunt. It emerges when you're living in signal. It's the natural outflow of being tuned. Instead of searching for what you're meant to do, you start noticing that your life is already arranging you to do it. Let me ground this with one last scenario. Imagine someone facing a health challenge. Maybe they've been dealing with exhaustion for months, pushing through with caffeine and willpower. In the static, they hear only one station. You're broken. You'll never recover. But then they begin practicing coherence daily. A different signal starts coming through. The impulse to rest earlier, the intuition to seek out a new treatment, the subtle nudge to let someone support them. Piece by piece, their body reorganizes around the new frequency. Healing in this sense isn't forced. It's allowed. That's the expansion. What starts as subtle inner signals becomes a whole new field of reality. But to fully grasp what's happening here, we need to look at the larger intelligence behind it all. The dimension where surrender turns out to be the deepest form of strength. Up until now, we've been talking about intuition as if it's just your body catching signals. But there's a deeper truth here. Those signals aren't random fragments floating through space. They're part of a larger intelligence, something vast, alive, and interactive. Call it the field, the quantum, the divine, or simply life itself. Whatever name you give it, this intelligence is the reason intuition feels like more than just personal instinct. It's connection. Here's the paradox. The greatest strength in tuning to this intelligence comes not from control, but from surrender. And I don't mean surrender as giving up or being passive. I mean the willingness to release your grip on outcomes so that a greater coherence can move through you. Think about it. When you try to control everything, you're broadcasting only from the limits of your own mind. You're playing a narrow playlist on repeat, hoping it matches the song life is trying to play. But when you surrender, you open the dial. Suddenly, you're not just catching faint intuition. You're in harmony with the intelligence broadcasting the whole symphony. This is why surrender feels so different from collapse. Collapse says, I quit, I'm powerless. Surrender says, I trust there's a signal wiser than my fear. And when you step into that trust, strength rises. You make braver moves, not weaker ones. You walk into conversations with openness instead of armor. You follow nudges that make no logical sense, only to discover they led you to the exact opportunity you couldn't have planned. Science even brushes against this paradox. Heart-brain coherence research shows that when the heart is in harmony with the nervous system, the body not only regulates more efficiently, but it also perceives subtle information faster. In other words, surrendering into coherence doesn't make you passive. It makes you more responsive, more alive to possibility. And this is where intuition reveals its deepest gift. It's not just about guidance for small decisions, or even about choosing better timelines. It's about remembering you're woven into something infinitely larger. The signals aren't separate from you. You are part of the broadcast. When you live from this place, even challenges take on a new meaning. They're not punishments or proof of failure. They're opportunities to deepen the signal, to refine your station, to align more fully with the intelligence that's always humming underneath the noise. And so the journey circles back to the simplest yet most profound practice. Trusting the signal. Trusting it not as a fragile moment you have to protect, but as the very frequency you are becoming. So here we are. You've seen how intuition isn't random magic, but a real signal your body picks up. You've learned how coherence clears the static, how identity locks the dial, how daily integration makes the song constant, and how surrender opens you to the symphony of life itself. The question now is, will you trust the signal? I want you to picture yourself standing in front of an old radio. The dial is in your hand. Around you, infinite songs are already playing. Stations of doubt, stations of clarity, stations of abundance, stations of love. Most people spin the dial endlessly, chasing a moment of harmony, then losing it again. But you now know how the tuner works. You know that when you breathe, when you soften, when you embody the identity of the station itself, the music doesn't drift away. It surrounds you. It is you. This is the truth of intuition. It's not an external voice handing you answers. It's the melody that plays when your body, mind, and heart stop fighting each other. It's coherence. It's resonance. It's home. And once you recognize that the broadcast never stops, the fear of missing it fades. Even if static returns, even if you lose the song for a while, you'll remember. The frequency is always there, waiting for you to tune back in. That's the safety, the freedom, and the power of this path. So as you step back into your life today, notice the subtle signals, the gentle impulses, the quiet nudges, the moments of stillness that feel like more than coincidence. That's your radio catching the song. Don't dismiss it. Don't wait for proof. Let yourself live in the music. Because in the end, reality isn't asking you to chase anything. It's inviting you to become the station itself.